Welcome to the Coaching Revealed podcast series on the journey to coaching success. I'm one of your podcast hosts, Austin Matzel. In this episode of Coaching Revealed, Miriam Meima and Lisa Dempsey are interviewed by Pamela Larde, Director of Education at the Institute of Coaching, where the three discuss finding one's ideal clients, unique value proposition as a coach, and how to determine your pricing. As experienced coaches, Miriam and Lisa both found themselves gravitating towards the coaching profession with a desire to have intentional impact on the lives of their clients. Lisa had found herself burnt out in her career and transitioned into coaching to help create healthier environments in the leadership space, while Miriam, with her background in consulting and culture work with large organizations, combines knowledge of psychology and business with her executive coaching clients. In terms of finding one's ideal client, both coaches advise discovering your own authentic stance rather than forcing a niche based on market needs. Within the earlier stages of one's career, working with a range of clients can help you discover what fits or doesn't fit for you personally. For pricing, Lisa and Miriam note that your pricing can and should be based on the value provided to the clients versus the number of hours you spend with them. Understanding client needs and budget also impacts coaching prices, with conversations with potential clients helping shape engagement duration, contract pricing, and more. Overall, Lisa and Miriam highlight in their conversation with Pamela the power of authenticity within your coaching practice, not only as a tool for knowing yourself, but in attracting a clientele and community that empowers you as a coach. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Coaching Revealed. Let's get started.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. I'm really excited. My name is Dr. Pamela Larde, and I am the Director of Education here at the Institute of Coaching. I'm really excited about today's conversation because there are questions that I selfishly and personally want the answers to, because there is an art and science to building a coaching business and matching with the right clients and all of that. And so I would love to hear, I'm looking forward to the conversation that I'm going to have today with two phenomenal guests who are thriving and in their own coaching businesses. Let me introduce my guests. So first of all, I have Miriam Meima and Lisa Dempsey. And these are two coaches who have created their businesses in two very different ways. And I'm looking forward to hearing how they both have built and are maintaining and growing their coaching businesses. So first, we're going to start with Lisa Dempsey. And Lisa, tell us your background in terms of how you built yourself up to a place to become a coach, and then a little bit about your coaching business.
Yeah, well, thank you. First of all, Dr. Larde, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to get to be here, and I'm curious to hear as well from Miriam what her journey has looked like. I call myself a leadership coach. I give myself the title of CEO and founder of my own company, Leadership Labs. That company is built off of my background of a degree in social systems psychology. So that's all about human dynamics. How do people interact with one another, whether it be inside of a family system, it be inside of an organizational system, or it be inside of a system of a city or a place. When I graduated from CU Boulder and when I did and I moved to Europe in 2000, everybody was very confused by this. That was not an idea that landed or translated well. And so I jumped into the field of basically people strategy. I did strategic human resources inside of really large multinational corporate. My career covered roles and responsibilities in more than 130 different countries. And I did that for the better part of 2 decades. I was sort of in the field, in the industry. I then hit the proverbial brick wall running 100 miles an hour, found myself in a massive burnout. In the midst of that crisis, it forced me to do 2 things. Number one, take a step back and look at myself. I discovered where it was that I was really out of alignment with my own values. I was really far away from the things that I originally started out being passionate about. You know, I fundamentally believe in the power of people. I believe that every single one of us is a leader, no matter what our job title is, no matter where we sit in the hierarchy. Everybody has an impact. And I was really far away from a lot of those fundamental things. They were on the horizon, but they felt really blurry for me. I also discovered I had a number of coping mechanisms that, I had developed over my career that were not serving me any longer. I also, as I went back into the business, as I recovered myself, and I went back into the organization that I had been in, I discovered that it was a really toxic culture. I was out of the business for about 4 months while I recovered mentally and physically from my burnout. And when I went back, the entire board was gone. Everybody in our people team was gone. That was when I realized as well, oh yeah, wait a minute, there's something really wrong here. What is that about? I discovered a lot about me, but what's going on in this bigger system? And that was when I decided to take on leadership coaching as my topic and the thing that I wanted to focus on. And really my purpose at this stage is changing the future of leadership for the better.
I wonder at what point we all realize that certain areas or professional spaces are toxic, and the level of awareness that it takes to realize it's not me. It's the environment, and that's huge, and that's one of the reasons why the profession of coaching is so important to me, because it helps with the awareness. Thank you so much, Lisa. So Miriam, so I would love to know your journey to coaching and what brought you to even discovering, the profession, and your background that sort of led you here.
I am hearing some parallels to Lisa. So even as a teenager growing up, I knew that I was deeply passionate about humans. And what I saw around me as just a naturally observant person is that most people are getting in their own way, whether they realize it or not. And what we're capable of is extraordinary. And people so desperately want to get out of their own way, just don't know how. And I was also deeply passionate about businesses and systems and team dynamics. And so similarly to how as individuals we get in our own way, as teams, we absolutely miss each other in communication and collaboration. And as a systems thinker, I could pick up on things that most people couldn't. And so what seemed obvious to me was revolutionary to other people, which was really helpful to me to learn very early in life. And so I went on to study in my undergraduate both business and psychology separately, and then leaning essentially towards one another. So when I was in my business classes, I was thinking about the more social aspects of business as well as strategy. I love goals. I love a good strategy, but mostly I'm interested in how do we come together as humans and make the most of any opportunity that we have in the marketplace right now. And then on the psychology side, I was leaning towards how do we show up in systems and make sure that we are as conscious and self-aware as possible. And then early in my career, I was in consulting, focused on culture specifically, working with a lot of large global organizations and helping them connect the dots between the behaviors that were in place and the results that they were getting. And so to me, it was so obvious that we were going to drive different business results and bottom line success, or lack thereof, based on how we're interacting with one another. But for most business leaders, that's, again, quite uncommonly revolutionary, meaning they're not able to get there on their own. So it was wonderful. I learned how to swim around in data and feel what is the narrative of all of the humans in the system that I need to help the leaders understand so that they can make change. And I loved that element of it. What was challenging for me was a lot of business leaders would contract us right before a board meeting to have a really beautiful board deck and look like they were checking the culture box rather than genuinely engaging with curiosity into what's happening for people and what is it that we need to be shifting so that we can be more congruent with how we say that we want to be and therefore the results that we want to drive. So the lack of kind of, I guess, integrity feels too strong because I don't think anyone was disingenuous consciously. It was just they were just going about it for different reasons. And so that was difficult for me. And it took my source of passion. I love my work. And it became more and more empty. And right around that same time, my mom passed away unexpectedly. And all of my strategies of moving through life, learning, being an intellectual, pouring myself into learning new frameworks, that did not serve me in moving through grief. And I hired my first coach back in 2008, and she helped me get out of my head into these things that she was calling emotions, which I didn't realize that I had spent a lot of time staying away from. And when I drop out of my head and into my heart, there was a lot there waiting for me. Even beyond that, I was able to drop from my heart into my intuition. And that was how I feel much more whole. And I was able to access more parts of myself in a way that felt very fulfilling. And my first coach inspired me to go on the trajectory of finishing my master's and separately doing a coaching program. And from there, I kind of parlayed into first in startups, working in strategy roles and people ops roles, and then later specializing in executive coaching.
Another thing that I would love to touch on is the extent to which the executive coaching allows for that heart work and that intuition work. I'm a professor for a leadership program, and there's a lot of talk and theories about interpersonal communication skills and, all these skills that don't go necessarily deep into the heart, and what, people call them soft skills. And when we're first getting into the profession, getting clients is a challenge. It's like, okay, what is my strategy and how am I going to do it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and to just sort of tie into what Miriam was just saying about really connecting the gut, heart, and mind. And there really is a genuine connection to that and leadership. It is not only a more authentic place, a more grounded place, but it's a place where you can tap into much more wisdom than what normally is available when we're just in this intellectual space and looking at, the dynamics and the communication and all of these things that we can put elsewhere. One of my favorite sayings is, you have to be the leader of one before you can be the leader of many. And so it starts with yourself. It starts inside. And that ties very much into I have sort of this allergy to this idea of like niche and building pipelines and doing all of these sorts of things. Now, it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means that that's how I show up in the world. And so when I was building my business, I really had to reconcile the fact that I am genuinely allergic to marketing. Like anytime anybody tries to come and like shove something down my throat or say, oh, hey, ta-da, I have something amazing for you. I know what I go, yeah, no. So I really sort of had to reconcile like if I am allergic to marketing, how am I going to build a business? And I was also faced, I remember very early on when I was I was still kind of doing my coaching education, and I would go to networking meetings and I would mention, yeah, I'm a coach, I'm setting up my business. So often the response would be, you're like the 10th coach that's here that's, talking to me, and everybody's a coach. What's going on? And so I really had to take on, number one, an abundance mindset. The mindset of, it is not my job to compete with all of these other coaches. They, in fact, are colleagues of mine. And it's my job to find out the spaces where either I can co-create with people, or what is the unique piece that I really want to take a stand in. And that's different than like your unique marketing proposition, right? It's a much more internal, grounded piece, and hence, really that tie into, the gut, heart, and mind, and having that aligned. Once that became clear for me, I became unshakable in what it was that I wanted to do, and I didn't have the need to go out and hustle. I didn't have the need to go out and try to convince people. And it sounds almost magical, right? It sounds like there's some sort of like pixie dust that you get to sprinkle all over everything. It's not. It's real. It's hard internal work to create that clarity. But once you have it, boom, it's there.
Yeah. Well, when you say, and I wrote it down, what do I want to take a stance in? I feel no pixie dust around that at first, because that first step into what do I want to take a stance in could be incredibly hard and scary and isolating in so many ways. And I mean, I would love to hear from you both, and I'll give Miriam a chance to chime in on this. What have you had to take a stance for in your work?
I would say Well, just building on what I'm hearing from Lisa here around being a leader of one before we can be a leader of many, I think as coaches we can model that of essentially first deciding, what do I care about, what do I am passionate about, what do I have strong beliefs in, which hopefully would then dictate what am I taking a stance in, or what am I taking a stand for. Where I see a lot of coaches try and reverse engineer a need in the marketplace into something that they want to take a stand for, and then become a quote unquote subject matter expert in. And it's forced. It's not from the inside out. And I would say for me, the thing that I took a stand in early in my coaching, which has been very consistent, is supporting people in knowing themselves fully and trusting that in that they will be better leaders, and not every role is the right fit for every person, but I do want people to be in the right roles for them and the right systems for them. I think that's what's best for everyone. So I go in with true openness into, is this person going to stay in this role? Are they meant to stay in this role? I don't know. Let's find out together. But I am going to support you in being more aware of who you are, how you want to lead, and also what's required of you to be effective if you do stay in this role.
So can I toss you the same question, Lisa? What what have you taken a stand for in your work?
So one of the very first stakes that I put in the ground was genuinely my belief about leadership, that every single one of us is a leader. And that's not only from a place of inclusivity, right? Because so often it was funny. I also noticed when I first started going out and networking and introducing myself as a coach, there were, in very broad strokes, one of two responses beyond the, oh, everybody else here is a coach too. But as I would say, I'm a leadership coach, there would either be kind of this puffing up, this armoring up of, yeah, I've been a leader. I've led X many number of people, or so many millions in budget, or whatever. There'd be this armoring and puffing up. Or you'd see this kind of shrinking back of like, yeah, I hope someday to maybe be a leader. Maybe, if I work a little harder at this and this, this sort of shrinking away from leadership. And so it was really interesting for me to see that just even the word leadership elicited this kind of response. I really had to put a stake in the ground around my belief about leadership, that it is, you do not need to armor up. It is not about where you sit in the hierarchy or how much responsibility for whoever, whatever, whenever you've had, or your need to make yourself better. It is, we all have leadership skill and ability, and it is about uncovering that and figuring out, how are you going to use your gifts and talents? How are you going to use, your zone of genius so that you can have the impact you most want to have? And this is what leadership is about. So I really had to take a strong stance in that and put a stake in the ground and say, right, we're going to take this idea of leadership and detangle it from all of this hierarchy, all of these typical systems that it sits within, and understand it as this truly authentic place that every human deserves to be in.
It's interesting because this idea of, and both of you seem to share this idea of being leader of self first and foremost. And it resonates deeply with me. I remember my doctoral program interview. Why do you want to get a PhD in leadership? Well, because I want to teach people, I want to learn and teach people self-leadership. And that was just a concept that really was not swirling around, and they found that fascinating. So I see a lot of value in that. So I'm just saying that it resonates. I also want to come back to this, of course I had a set of questions, but the language you both are using, I'm like, I could ask this question using your language. So this is Lisa's language again. But this idea of being allergic to marketing. I know, so for example, in LinkedIn, I'm sure you get messages from people saying, hey, I do this and this and this with my business. I can scale your business. And, and it's interesting because there's a whole language around these marketing pitches that I immediately like, not interested. So how do you get past that piece of it as a business owner in order to attract people to your business if you're not traditionally marketing? And I don't even know if there is a traditional way to market. What resonates with you in terms of how you attract people?
Yeah. Ready to advance your coaching practice? Join the Institute of Coaching and tap into the world's leading resource for coaching science and professional development. With over 4,000 members across 130 countries, the IOC offers invaluable networking opportunities with an elite global coaching community and innovative learning to broaden your knowledge and keep you at the forefront of coaching best practices. Engage in cutting-edge learning events with world-renowned coaching scholars, from webinars and seminars to discussion groups, research projects, and more. Try any membership free for 30 days. Use promo code IOC Podcast and visit instituteofcoaching.org/join to get started.
Okay, great. I share an analogy of marketing, but more so of sales. So maybe we get to that later of how I really had to overcome and reprogram my orientation towards sales. I believe that coaching is a referral-based business. There's very few people who are going to go to Google and search for a leadership coach or fill in the blank type of coach and follow a bit of a rabbit hole, land on a site that resonates with them and reach out. Sometimes that happens. But more often than not, people are going to people they trust and they're asking for a referral. And so I am of the belief that we want to be very clear about, I guess, who we are and what we're offering, as we've been talking about, and that we want people to know about that and be able to articulate that on our behalf and serve as a source of referral. So to me, that making sure that I'm equipping people with knowledge around what I specialize in, what I'm passionate about, the impact that I've had on individuals and companies. And so that if anyone is a potential fit for me, I come to mind for them. And usually I think about business development in my world is really just relationship development. So making sure that I am continuing to connect in genuine ways with people that I have worked with or want to work with in the future. I agree with Lisa's abundance mindset. That has served me very well and been essential in growing my business. And I hold that when I think about business development. I'm not going to reach out to someone I don't really want to do business with. I'm not going to invest in those relationships. I'm going to trust that it's enough or more than enough to really go where I feel called and that it feels authentic to me.
I love that. I love that. What is your take, Lisa?
Well, it really is about coaching is a relationship based business, and so that means that it operates really differently than products, than even services. It is both a power and a gift, but you really have to understand it in order to learn how to operate in it. So it really is about building relationships. It really is about keeping yourself grounded and remaining authentic. Any kind of incongruence always brings in some sort of doubt, but more so in a space like this, where really people, you need to be that trusted advisor. And it's not about a pursuit of perfectionism, but it's about a pursuit of authenticity. And so really the more grounded and authentic you can be in who you are, what you want to be doing, the impact you want to be having in the world, the more you're going to be able to attract that. And so that means you don't need to follow some of the traditional, marketing lore that works really well for, products, other services. You need to be doing the inner work of understanding who you are, what you're about, what you want to be offering, and then speaking to that with clarity and in whatever way most fits you, whether that be, I have a podcast because I really enjoy being in conversation with people. Ask me to sit down and write a blog post and you'll watch my eyes roll back to the back of my head. So, I learned about myself that I enjoyed being in conversation with people. So choosing that medium to create visibility, to talk about the things that are important to me, to explore the things. That's the thing as well, is, being constantly curious, not digging into, okay, this is what it is and getting a fixed position, constantly being curious and looking out to what is there in the world. And that's also a huge part of the abundance mindset, right? Just knowing that no matter how much you know, there's always more that you don't know. So curiosity is going to serve you, and making that visible in whatever way works for you, whatever way is resonant for you is the most important thing to building a successful coaching practice.
So I want to dig into the authenticity piece of it a little bit because, as coaches, it's one of the things that we work with our clients around is authenticity and self-awareness and just kind of understanding our blocks in certain ways. And so I'm just wondering, as coaches, as business owners, How do you keep yourself in check when it comes to your own blocks or questions about your own authenticity, or challenging you to do things that you probably, it's not resonant with you, but you probably need to do it? Have there been conflicts like that with what's blocking you from stepping into something that isn't comfortable, like writing a blog? Or for me, it would be networking events. I'm not, that doesn't feel comfortable to me. But I know that when I've done them after, I'm like, oh, it wasn't that bad. I could have, gone in there with less anxiety. So how do you keep yourself in check to challenge yourself to do things that you think isn't necessarily your thing?
That's a beautiful question, because it just calls into account that just the difference between something that's inauthentic and something that's outside our comfort zone. And I think that's often confused. And so it's a brilliant question of, how do I know one from the other? And as a coach, how do I know what to lean into versus what to avoid? And I mean, to keep it simple, I just turn to another coach and I say, help me through this, help me dig in. Well, there's something here, and I don't know if it's my belief systems, if I'm getting in my own way, or if there's my gut is telling me something. And so over the course of now decades, I can usually coach myself in the moment and tune in again to that gut, heart and head. And if it's the no is coming from my head, then I am thinking, okay, this is something that's outside my comfort zone. And so I need to practice self-compassion, and I need to be really thoughtful about how to set myself up for success. Do I need someone there with me as an ally, or do I need to have a time to go for a walk outside before and after? How do I essentially create the conditions in which I can do my best in this? And then I'm kind of nurturing my nervous system as I'm doing something that's outside my comfort zone. Or is it something that my gut is telling me don't do it? And in which case I can trust that it doesn't matter why I'm not supposed to. I used to get caught in the why. And over time, I'm learning actually it doesn't so much matter. It just is a no for now. And I move on with my life.
Love it. That's a book. Thank you. What are your thoughts, Lisa?
Well, they're very much aligned. I think that the only addition that I would make is I will focus on, what do I want my impact to be? What is the impact that I'm after? And if there is indeed something that is, it's just outside of my comfort zone, I need to learn to stretch myself, and it's aligned with my impact and it's aligned with the values that I want to be honored, then I will absolutely go for it. There's that excitement in the tension of the terror and the excitement of doing something new, right? And so, I bring that bigger picture impact. What is the impact that I want to be having? Why might this thing be important to me? And is it actually aligned with my bigger picture? Then yeah, absolutely. There's then actually a lot of joy that turns up for me in diving into it, even though it may feel uncomfortable.
So I want to pivot a little bit into sales. Miriam had mentioned sales earlier. Is there a particular approach that either of you take, when it comes to producing sales and bringing in revenue? Do you have different streams? What is your approach to sales?
Lisa, do you want to go first? Yeah.
Sure, I'm happy to dive into it. I do like to have, it's not typical like different revenue streams, but having multiple sources. I like working sometimes with, I will have a basket of individual clients who I have an individual relationship with them. Sometimes they're coming through a larger organization that is referring people to me. Sometimes they're a part of larger programs. So really making sure that there are multiple streams through which I'm remaining connected to people and bringing business in. Another thing that really served me was, in the beginning, having a really clear idea of budgets, numbers, what amount of money was going to be important to me, what were the minimums. And also I was very blessed to come into coaching with a fairly healthy buffer, a financial buffer. And that really allowed me to have the freedom and autonomy to be making decisions that were not driven around the fear and the anxiety of, how am I going to pay my mortgage this month? What do I have to say yes to in order to get that done? And again, going back to authenticity, it allowed me the space to be able to say no to the things that were not resonant for me. Say no to the things that did not align with what the impact I wanted to be having in the world, and seek out those that were a big yes for me. And so that, in terms of it, that's not the sales side of, but it's the other side. It's making sure that so that you're paying attention to your sales, but that you also have enough financial buffer behind you so that you can make those resonant choices and you're not in that place of panic and scarcity all of the time. That was a huge difference for me in really making the kinds of sales that I wanted and keeping track, staying on track with that.
That so perfectly describes one of the concepts I write about in one of my books, where I call it voice lessons. And it's really being able to say yes to the things that give us life and that we're drawn to, and no to the things that, don't resonate with us. And a lot of people struggle with those seemingly two very simple things. They're not always simple.
Usually not clear cut. There's a lot of forest in between, a whole lot of weeds and a whole lot of stuff that's in between those things.
But. Absolutely. Yes. Voice lessons. I love it. Go ahead, Miriam.
I started without any money. I also didn't expect it to work. So there was a panic that I was living with, but it was more pervasive than specific to coaching. So I said yes to everything. Anyone that wanted me, if I felt like I could deliver, I said yes. If I didn't feel like I could deliver, I wouldn't, because it's too painful to me. I'm too much of especially back then, was too much of a self-critic. So I knew the agony I would feel if I couldn't deliver. So I never put myself knowingly in that situation. But besides that, I said yes to friggin' everything. And it gave me such a range of experiences that was really amazing. I am now where you describe, Lisa, of being able to really be thoughtful about what resonates with me. And when I meet with a potential client who really wants to meet with me, that theoretically is quite basically aligned with what I specialize in, which is high growth leaders and high growth companies. But if I just feel like they're not in it for the right reasons, I don't want to work with them. And so I don't. And that's a wonderful place to be. But I can help them find someone who might be the right coach for them. It's more of a waterfall strategy that I have now of making sure that everyone gets the right fit. But it took a while to get to where I am.
It's so interesting. And I love that you both come from very different places, in the, I guess at the beginning, in the launching of your coaching world. I was somewhere in the middle where I was working. My job was my cushion so that if all things didn't go well, I at least had that salary. But it was still risky because I didn't know, if the coaching thing would work. Is it even going to work? Am I using all this extra time after work? So there were fears, but it's interesting the different avenues that people take to go into the profession. So as you think about the types of clients that you've worked with, I've had some interesting situations when I'm teaching coach training courses where I've had people say, I will not coach this population of people. And it's very much grounded in biases that they might have. Sometimes it's related to religion, religious beliefs, or values that don't match the life that some people are living. Have you had those kinds of experiences? And I would love to hear you just, even if you don't give your own experience, what you would say to a coach who's got a hard line about, I will not work with this population of people. Is that okay? Is that not okay? What are your, when you're deciding who your client's going to be, are there hard no's? And if there are, how do you handle that?
Well, I have a fundamental belief that as coaches, we need to have at least a baseline belief in the potential of our client. I will often frame it when I do mentor coaching. It's almost like you need to love your client enough to believe in them. And if you are not in that place, you should not be coaching that person. That is a person you need to refer on. Now, what I love about Miriam's story is, this skill of building range. As coaches gain more skill and experience, find more grounding in themselves, we will expand our range. We will find that, that stretch that used to be really uncomfortable, or that doubt, that bias, that disbelief that we had in people will fade away. So it will grow over time, but really the fundamental piece is you need to believe enough in the potential of your client so that you can coach them from a place of wholeness. If you believe that this person is broken or not functional or not deserving of your time, effort, and energy, please refer them.
Do them a favor.
Yeah.
Yes.
Send them along to somebody else.
Yeah. And I think it's a very honest conversation that we have to have with ourselves. I would never say you have to be willing to coach anyone and everyone in every situation. We have our own backgrounds, traumas, things that we've dealt with that I think it's fair to say I might not be able to handle this situation. But I think it's important for us to ask ourselves what's going on there with myself and just to be clear on it and not to allow that to just be the surface level, you know, I wouldn't be able to allow myself to move on personally without examining it a bit and just kind of finding out what's going on there.
Yeah, being curious about it.
I wholeheartedly, yes, exactly. And we are in positions of privilege. We are confidants to people. And I know Lisa and I are both leadership coaches. So I am a sounding board and thought partner to a lot of decision makers who have influence over thousands of people's lives. And if I'm not examining my bias, then I am colluding in theirs consciously or unconsciously. And I feel like I do my absolute best to think about the employees of every leader I work with and think, what do they need me to be saying to this person right now? Not only, I'm really careful to not create an echo chamber with my clients and making sure that they're hearing from me what they need to hear, not just what they want to hear. And so to me, examining my bias is part of my practice every day. And so if I feel a hard no, that tells me this is more to do with me than it has to do with them. And there's something here for me to learn.
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough the importance for us to continue to learn is we benefit our clients when we are learning beings. So yeah, I love that. One thing I didn't mention or ask about was pricing. And I'm curious to know how you determine pricing. It's always the big question. I get inbox questions all the time from people saying, look, I'm starting my business. Which should I start at? Should I start at $60 an hour? Or should I do $750 an hour? I've seen coaching at every point in that range and higher. How do you make decisions around pricing?
I was lucky enough to be essentially told how much to charge, which was very helpful to me. So I was at one point charging $150, and I started working with a coaching firm that said, we will need you to charge $500 an hour. Not that I was going to take home $500, but they needed me to charge the client $500. And they said, would you be comfortable with that? And I was still in the say yes to everything mode. So I said, yeah, absolutely. I'm comfortable with that. Well, I mean, inside, I really struggled with, that's a lot of money. And what does that mean? And so what happened for me over time is that I learned to orient towards the value of what I'm delivering to the client, and how is that either impacting the individual or the system. So depending on the role that someone's inside a business, the ROI for coaching is extraordinary. There's really no way to put a number on it. But when I'm working one-on-one with someone around, how do I manage up, that's a little bit different. So the ROI for that individual or for the company is a little bit different. So I've tried to get outside of myself and orient towards what's the price point that is market value right now. And it is different in the United States than it is in Europe, which it is in the global South, and so on. So being market sensitive to the market, but also thinking about the ROI and depersonalizing it. I've found for myself structuring my work as month-to-month engagements instead of hourly works a lot better for me, because I am always thinking about my clients, whether I'm meeting with them or not. And so charging for some of that emotional bandwidth helps me feel engaged. And that matters, because the more I emotionally am invested in my client, then the more they're getting from me, and the value exchange is stronger.
I absolutely love that that process that you described. Wow, thank you. Lisa, do you have any particular thoughts on this?
Well, yeah, I do love this question, because it's a really hard question in coaching, because you will find people who are operating at every level of that spectrum, right? You have the people who are taking home $50 a session because they're working through one of these really large platforms, and it's all about scalability. And then you have the highly exclusive people. Because inclusivity is such a strong value of mine, I wanted to create a coaching business whereby I could honor my own value. So I knew that my time, my insight, my ability to be present and what it is that unfolds when I'm present with other human beings was powerful. I wanted to honor the value of that while at the same time honoring that not everybody is in a position to pay what it is that I think my time is worth. And so I work with a highly dynamic pricing schedule that is based upon, are you paying for this individually, or is your organization sponsoring you? Are you currently employed and looking for a promotion and looking to be more effective in your leadership? Or are you unemployed and maybe suffering some, workplace trauma, and there's a lot to unfold and a lot of work to be done, but you are not in a position to afford all of that. So it's not about, having to have a huge amount of empathy for every situation, but it's that combination of, number one, does the situation fit my purpose and does it align with my values? What value do I think I bring to the situation? And what sort of circumstance does this person or this organization, this team, because again, I also work across the entire system. I work with individuals, teams, and entire organizations. What is it that they need so that they can engage and get what is actually going to be impactful for them? So it sounds really complicated, but I make it such so that I can also do my job as a coach of meeting people where they're at.
Oh, the combination of what you both said is just incredibly, it's intriguing, and I think it speaks to, we're not necessarily going to just have these blanket sticker prices that everybody has to abide by, but that it's really resonates with everything you've both said throughout this conversation. I'm looking at the human being that I'm working with, or the organization as a whole that I'm working with, and I'm going to respond accordingly. I think that's the essence of coaching. I think that's what's so important about this profession. So just to wrap up, would love to hear just a word of wisdom or experience that you'd like to impart in terms of one of your biggest lessons that you've learned in this journey that you can impart to the audience.
I would say, in summary, love yourself. Anyone listening to this is interested in being a coach, which is someone who's wanting to be of service in the world. And I am so grateful to humans who want to be of service. So thank you to everyone listening for investing in yourself and wanting to learn more and being someone who's curious enough to engage and listening to the podcast. That's incredible. So trust that that's almost enough. And I would say that almost is just get comfortable talking about money with people. Don't avoid it. Don't wait for the last second. Just talk about money and then have an even exchange to see, does this align with me? Does this not align with me? And I feel like what I've learned over time is just to be collaborative. Like, here's what I do. What is it that you need? Let's together figure out if this is a fit, and go in very open-minded. And as long as I'm doing that, I feel like I'm able to stay true to myself and the purpose that I have in this work.
Thank you. I love that.
Yeah, what I really wish for listeners to take away is, as much as Miriam said, the belief in yourself, really believing that if you are here to make a positive difference in the world, that is valuable. So, but believe in your ability to do that. Find your own zone of genius, find your own way of doing that. Really then, put that stake in the ground and go for it. Not at all costs, but go for it in your way. Find ways to make what you believe in about the world visible and make it important. That makes a huge amount of difference, and don't underestimate the value of that. I know in the early stages of my coaching practice, there was the fear of leaving the big cushy corporate job and leaving all of that perceived safety and security, and what am I going to do? Are people going to laugh at me? And none of those fears actually came to fruition.
Well, thank you to the both of you. I appreciate your time, and I've gotten some nuggets from this conversation that I really appreciate. So thank you so much, and thank you to our audience who've joined us. I hope you have learned a few things, and that you've got some things to think about as we move forward. So thank you again, Lisa and Miriam.
Thank you for hosting.
Yes, we appreciate you.
Appreciate you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Larde.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Coaching Revealed, brought to you by the Institute of Coaching. You can learn more about the Institute on our website at instituteofcoaching.org. You can stay up to date with new episodes of our podcast by liking and following Coaching Revealed. You can also find us on social media on LinkedIn, Instagram, and X with the handle Institute of Coaching. We also love hearing from our guests, so please reach out to us with thoughts you have on this episode and any questions you have about coaching. Until next time, this is Emily Tarani with Coaching Revealed.